Hi everyone, it's Christy from Green Eyed Tarot. Today I am here to talk about exploring sacred feminine archetypes using the tarot. The idea for this video came from this book right here that I have been reading and working through. It's called Sage Huntress Lover Queen. It's by Mara Branscombe. I did talk about this book in a previous video. I was talking about books that I was reading. And so I've been reading through this and getting to know the structure of the book because the book is broken down into 7 different sacred female archetypes. So the subtitle of the book is Access Your Power and Creativity Through Sacred Female Archetypes. So the book is basically about these 7 female archetypes that basically show up over and over again, right? Archetypes are just these patterns or models of characteristics that are sort of repeated, throughout history and within the collective unconscious. So something like archetypal tarot, that's something that has really interested me. I've been reading a lot of Joseph Campbell and just and a lot of Jung and like how archetypes relate to the tarot and things like that. So it's something that really interests me. But one of the other things that is a really important part of my practice is connecting with the sacred feminine. I do a lot of goddess work in my spiritual practice. I connect with goddess energy. So this is something that really is a part of my spiritual practice. And I really wanted to kind of bridge that with my tarot practice and figure out how I can bring the energy of certain tarot decks into this practice with this book. So basically looking at tarot through the lens of these 7 female archetypes. And if you know anything about archetypes, and I'm sure there's plenty of you that know way more than I do, but the basis in terms of the work that Jung did, he believed that there were universal and mythic archetypes that live within the collective unconscious, like I was saying. Just these patterns or these models of characteristics that are repeated. And the author of the book does talk a lot about how we are all a combination of these archetypes and access them at any stage of our life. So we're not, it doesn't mean that we can't embody and connect with the maiden archetype when we're just young. It's not just for young people. It is an energy that we can connect with. It is an archetype that has repeated, and it's just a model of characteristics, and it just has been repeated in this collective unconscious, and we can access that at any time. So I really love that, just thinking about it in that way. And, so the author does talk about how it's not really about male or female. It's about that these female archetypes are ones that anyone can access and anyone can connect to and will at all different stages of their life. So just to talk about the book a little bit and about the way it's structured. So I have some flags here because, like I said, I've been going through it myself, but also just so that I can kind of talk to you about the layout of the book. So there is there's an introduction section, which is really neat. And it talks about how to use this as a way to access creativity, right? This is how to sort of connect with that creative energy by exploring these sacred feminine archetypes. And then each section is devoted to one of the 7 archetypes. So here we start with the Maiden. And I love it because every section of the book has the archetype, and then there's a quote to go along with it right on that introduction page for that chapter, which I love. And then every single archetype also has a poem, which is lovely. They're beautiful. It's beautiful writing. So a poem that sort of connects you and gets you started and gets you connecting with the energy of this archetype. And then obviously an introduction into the background, the background of the archetype, what it's all about. And then it gets into doing a meditation, how we embody the maiden archetype in this case. So there's a few meditations. And then what I love is the author goes into working with the maiden's shadow and how within the maiden archetype, there is a shadow side and how basically that shows up in our life, at different stages. So it talks about the shadow aspects of each archetype, and then we get introduced to a specific deity. So for the Maiden, it's Persephone. So we meet Persephone during this chapter on the Maiden archetype. So every single one has a different deity that you will connect with or sort of meet, throughout your reading of that chapter. There's a guided visualization. And there's like a way to connect to sort of a creative activity. There's a free writing practice, lots of journal prompts. I love this journal prompt, this self-reflection practice with this journal prompt, where you're filling in these different blanks here. So this is for the Maiden energy. And then there's journal prompts to work with the Maiden shadow. And I love that it gives characteristics of the Maiden shadow: afraid of change, eager to please people, resentful, angry, naive, and self-sacrificing. So if you're just looking to connect with like some keywords related to this shadow aspect of the Maiden archetype, then it's right there for you as well. So it's really easy to connect to. So there's journal prompts for embodying the Maiden's characteristics and then working with the shadow aspect. So I do love the way that's set up. I absolutely love that that's part of this, because there's that light and shadow for all the archetypes. So that's how the book is pretty much structured in terms of each chapter that's devoted to one of the archetypes. So like this is the lover archetype, and here we're meeting Ocean, Orisha, goddess of love and abundance. So like I said, every chapter we're sort of also meeting a goddess that sort of embodies that archetype. But there's so many different practices in here, and I'm looking forward to diving in even more. But I really, like I said, wanted to connect tarot to this practice. And as a way to sort of bridge that spiritual practice with my tarot. And it's also just a way for me to sort of invigorate and bring new energy into my tarot practice. I was just watching a video this morning from Dawn Michelle and Lisa Pepez, and how they were talking about burnout and what that looks like in all different spaces, not just with tarot. So I feel like there can be like creative burnout, and obviously burnout for your work, like whatever your profession is or your job that you're doing. And there's burnout for hobbies too, and things like tarot and things like journaling and there's so many different types of burnout. I feel like there's social burnout, like when you've been socializing a lot and out and about and just, in those social spaces and things like that. So it was a really great video. I will definitely link it below in the description box so that if you haven't seen it, you can check it out. But I find this is like a way that for me, right, this is something that that brings me joy, that is bringing me closer to my spiritual practice. And it's not something that I'm putting like limits on. It's like as I can explore and go through this book, when I have time, when I set time for myself, I do that. And I'm thinking this would be a great way to also invigorate my tarot practice and also connect with decks that I already have, in my collection. So I'm really looking forward to this. And so this is the book. And now I'm just going to talk about the deck. So I chose one deck to embody each one of the 7 archetypes presented in this book. So I will let you know what all the archetypes are. And I'm going to add a hashtag to this in case anyone wants to join in. You do not have to have the book, even if you just have decks that you think would connect well with the archetypes or want to go through your decks after kind of hearing what the archetypes are and just the different characteristics of them. And then you think, I'd like to match up decks. I would love for anyone who's interested to join in. Again, the sacred feminine, connecting with goddess energy, that's a huge part of my life. So this is something that's very interesting to me. It may not be to anyone else, but I definitely would love to see if anyone else connects or can connect their decks in this way. So the 7 archetypes that are discussed in the book are Maiden, Mother, Sage, Huntress, Lover, Mystic, and Queen. So there are 7 archetypes. So I've chosen one tarot deck to represent each of these archetypes. And I feel like there are no rules to this. If you have more than one, or you think of a tarot and an oracle, or you just like, I don't even want to use tarot, I just want to use oracle decks, that's fine. There's literally no rules. This is supposed to be something that connects you to the sacred feminine and connects you to that energy and exploring it and connecting to your tarot and your oracle decks and connecting those together. So But I chose one because it allowed me to kind of really go through my decks and like hold them in my hand and look at them and just think about and reflect on each one of these archetypes. So we'll start with the Maiden. So the Maiden, and these are just some keywords that I pulled from the book to describe the Maiden archetype. So wildly magnetic, authentic, passionate, a youthful spirit, creative power, reclaiming creativity, an adventurous nature, exploratory, and expansive. So I sort of love those words. There's a lot of words there to sort of guide my thought process and when I was going through the decks. And for me, the Maiden deck, the one that is in my collection, and like you may have ones that probably embody this, they may embody this, you know, to you, it is a better fit. But for me in my collection, the deck I chose to embody the Maiden archetype is the Tarot au Remords Étrange, which is a French deck. And it loosely translates to tarot of strange antlers or strange branches. There's a few different interpretations of it, but it's a very loose interpretation. But this is a gorgeous deck. I purchased this from Amazon France. I'm not sure if it's still available. I will definitely link, the decks in the description box below. I believe I have a walkthrough of this deck, so I can definitely link that in the cards if anyone's interested. But it's a gorgeous deck. It is a little bigger than standard tarot size. It's matte cardstock. But the reason I chose this is, to me, this deck, the imagery, especially the spirit of it, to me embodies that Maiden archetype, that very sort of that very innocent and youthful, like it said, adventurous spirit. This is like an adventure in a deep forest, right? The deep forest. This is like setting off on that adventure, but it's also a very freeing deck to me. It feels very, again, passionate, and it has that youthful spirit. Within the deck, in many of the images in the artwork, the figure is unclothed. It just, to me, it reminds me of like being born, like when we're born as babies and we're born naked, we're just in the skin that we're in. We're born into the skin that we have and like nothing else. We come out into the world, just new and excited to learn and explore and just see what the world has to offer. And this deck to me feels like that. It definitely has that Maiden energy. It's definitely, the figures in the deck are definitely female presenting. It lends to that female energy, female archetypal energy. But again, female archetypes are really embodied by everyone. It doesn't have, it's sort of, it goes beyond the barriers of gender, right, into that non-binary space and just the space that all of us can embody. But to me, this deck feels it also has that very like spring-like vibe. So the way in the book we meet Persephone, I feel a lot of Persephone in this deck, just that energy, of her sort of emerging, from the underworld and into the light and into, and just into the forest, where, she can explore again and, be that, youthful spirit. And it also, to me, this deck has it talks about reclaiming creativity. And I love this, like, look at this. This image of the high priestess, and it's literally like a face. It's just a face and the book open and just absorbing all of it, just kind of absorbing everything that the world has to offer, that this forest is offering, and just all that knowledge within that book and everything that's, available. Again, that very expansive feeling. So to me, this definitely embodies. I pulled this out and I kind of immediately thought, I pulled a whole bunch of decks off my shelf and then I started to sort of whittle them down, based on the energies. And I was looking at the keywords and I'm thinking about what these characteristics are. And this one was definitely one that I pulled off the shelf immediately. And as I started to, look through it again and connect with the energy, look at this card. To me, this just embodies that Maiden energy. And like I said, I love how the figures are completely nude, unclothed, unencumbered by their clothing, right? They don't need that. It's just that free spirit, that free, youthful spirit, that wild, authentic energy. Like I feel like when you're unclothed and unmasked, you have no clothes to hide you. You're just being, your free self, your most authentic, free self. So I love this. Oh my gosh. The Strength card. And she has like these like tattoos all over her body. It's such a beautiful deck. I'm so glad I have this out because it was on my shelf. I haven't pulled it out in a while. So again, reinvigorating my tarot practice by connecting with decks that I already have and that I haven't seen for a while. So this is the Tarot Au Remords Étrange, which I chose to embody the Maiden archetype. Okay, so the next archetype is the Mother. And so for the Mother, the words we have are steady, abundant, positive, life-giving force, radical self-love, healing the body. I like also healing body image, right? Or trauma, and nurturing vision, manifestation, growth, steadfast, right? A steadfast nature. So something that feels solid. And I love that radical self-love, that abundant, positive, life-giving force. So for the Mother, to embody the Mother archetype, the deck that I pulled out of my collection for this archetype is the Ember and Aura Tarot. This is the Awakening edition. I believe this deck is out of print. I will definitely link whatever info I can in the description box, but I do believe this deck is out of print, so I apologize, but this is the Ember and Aura, like I said, the Awakening edition. So this deck is one that the creator made this deck after going on a retreat. And it does, she went on this retreat and she was, kind of connecting. It was like disconnecting, to sort of reconnect type of, and also trying to heal as a Christian, as someone who was religious and who was raised in the Christian faith. I believe she was Episcopalian. And she created this deck. It was a journey sort of as a way to heal that sacred feminine, to heal her connection with Mary, the mother of Jesus, and also Mary Magdalene. So that is an energy that is woven throughout this deck. And this deck to me it has a very mothering energy. And as anyone who, like I was raised Catholic, so I have a lot of experience and I've had lots of information, I should say, and education, given to me in terms of my religious education and things like that. So, but I was always drawn to Mary and Mary Magdalene, always drawn to the female, figures within Catholicism, that were presented and just female figures that were presented from the Bible and things like that. So to me, this, I think because of the backstory of this deck and how it was created. How about I flip through the deck instead of just continuing to talk? But I feel like because I think a lot of the energy that I'm getting off of this deck is because of what I know about it as well. So it's not just the imagery, it's just what I know of how this and why this deck was created. To me, this was sort of a no-brainer for me in terms of the Mother energy, because it is it does have a very soft color palette, right? This has a very calming and pleasing to me color palette in terms of this like watercolory, but very like light. So it's giving me that sort of positive, life, like it's a life-giving force, but also that self-love, that radical self-love energy. And so here we can see this has some imagery that can be seen as pretty religious in terms of this looking like it's the figure of Jesus. To me, it's okay. Some people have an issue with it. To me, I can just see this as a figure, as a spiritual teacher, the way that I see Jesus and view Jesus as he was a man. And, the messages that he was giving, as a spiritual leader and a spiritual teacher. So for me, it doesn't, it's not a problem, but I do know that people that have suffered religious trauma or, that have very strong feelings, about, time within, organized religion around Christianity and Catholicism. But this deck, like I said, to me has this very mothering energy. And again, I haven't pulled this off my shelf in quite a while. And I'm so just thankful just to hold it right now and flip through it. I just have it's just giving me such a good feeling. So again, just reinvigorating my tarot practice and reinvigorating my connection to some of these decks that I have had for a long time that have been on the shelf. And this is a way for me to, to pull them out and get to know them again and remember, by connecting these different archetypal energies and thinking about these keywords and the characteristics of these archetypes. It really is, bringing me closer to these decks that maybe I haven't seen in a while. But to me, it does have a very soft, mothering energy, but it also has, this deck to me has a very earthy energy too. There's a lot of, to me, that it has a grounding energy. So it reminds me of that sort of earthy, steadfast, grounded, solid, sort of energy. So that's the Ember and Aura Tarot, the Awakening Edition. That's the deck I chose for the Mother archetype. So now we move on to Sage, the Sage archetype. And so for the Sage, the keywords we have are wisdom, discernment, transformation, intuitive channels, flowing and fluid, evolving, experiencing a sense of belonging and connection, emotional literacy and stability, a deep listening within. So I love those keywords. And so the deck I immediately thought of, and it's literally the newest deck, the newest addition to my collection. So this is a brand new deck to me, pretty much. It is still in order, but I immediately thought of this deck just from walking through it and flipping through it and holding it in my hands. It is probably one of the decks I'm most excited about to work with, and that is the Circle of Doors Tarot. This deck is absolutely amazing, and I'm not gonna go, I promised myself I wasn't gonna sit here and gush and gush and gush, but oh my gosh, this deck. So I chose this as the Sage, and it is still in order because I have literally only flipped through it, touched every card, looked at all the images, read some of the guidebook. So, but just from the images and not even the information from the guidebook, to me, this deck feels like deep connection. It feels like a deep sense of belonging woven throughout all of the figures that are seen in this deck. And that emotional connection, again, that sense of belonging and those intuitive channels, right? Sometimes there's a collective intuition, you have your own intuition, but there's this collective, like the collective unconscious, there's this collective intuition that maybe becomes more flowing and more fluid and more transformative the more we connect with others, that are like-minded. So this deck is absolutely, never mind the fact that it's stunning, but it is absolutely has that feeling of connection and that sense of belonging and that deep listening within. And I really have yet to get to know this yet. So, but it is absolutely stunning. Look at this Lover's card. If that doesn't scream connection, I just feel like they're so connected in this image, and that deep sense of belonging and that deep listening. They're silent, but they're hearing. They're hearing so much from each other. And just this, to me, has a very transformational energy as well. And so this deck was created, it was an art installation in California, I believe. And it started as an art installation, and it talks about how there's the different doors, presented to you that you can walk through. Again, it is just stunning on a whole nother level and just hitting me right in my soul, on a whole nother level. I can't even describe, how much this is. Like I said, just connecting, I have such a connection to it already. And like I said, I haven't even really used it much yet, but this is definitely going to be the deck I use to explore the Sage archetype. and to move through that archetype and all of its characteristics. But it is absolutely gorgeous. Oh my gosh, look at this 10 of Cups. And I love that it has keywords. It includes keywords on the minor arcana, but it is absolutely gorgeous, and to me definitely embodies that sage. Just to me, it has a deep well of wisdom, like that's going to keep giving. It's like sort of like an endless well to tap into, endless doors to walk through, you know, in this deck. So this for me is the embodiment of the sage archetype. When we're connecting with that sage, sacred female archetype, it is definitely the Circle of Doors Tarot. So that is the choice. And can we just talk about like the size? Like normally I don't like large decks, but this card stock is just absolutely amazing too. So there's that bonus too. Okay, so the next archetype is Huntress. So the keywords we have for Huntress are warrior spirit, knows their worth, pushes through challenges, finds true inner power, helps find their voice. We think of activists, empowered, fierce, and facing fears head on. So this, I just love those descriptive keywords. And I feel like there's probably a few that I could have picked, but literally when I was going through and I said, okay, reading these keywords, there was really no other choice for me. I immediately decided that this was going to be the deck. I didn't even really look through other decks, or it was just, this was the first one I chose. Like the first deck was the Huntress, I already knew. And that's the Witch Sister Tarot by Julia Jeffrey. So now this deck is, again, if we think about what those keywords, right? Huntress, warrior spirit, knowing their worth, pushing through challenges, finding that inner power. To me, this deck is the definition of finding your inner power, of being empowered, of finding your voice. To me, this deck is the deck for me personally to help me find my voice. And that's through connecting with these witch sisters and these familiars, and just this archetypal, like this whole archetypal journey in itself in this deck. But to me, this is a very empowered and very strong. It definitely has a warrior spirit. I mean, just look at these images, especially the ones where the figures are just dead, like staring dead straight, like dead in the face, like looking directly out of the card at you, the person who's using it. To me, Julia Jeffrey, she's literally one of my favorite artists. And I feel like she does facial expressions. I've said this time and time again, her facial expressions, the body posture, like she communicates so much with the eyes, like I said, looking out at you. But this deck to me is the embodiment of a warrior spirit and a fierce, just fierce, facing the fears head on, and just knowing and finding that voice, like 100%. So if you have not seen this deck, I feel like it's almost impossible to not have seen this deck, because I feel like it came out and everyone has been talking about it, and rightly so, because it is absolutely gorgeous. But yeah, this is the Witch Sister Tarot. There was no other choice for me for the Huntress archetype. And as I explore that archetype, this is a deck I'm pretty much using every day anyway. But I look forward to really connecting to that Huntress archetype and seeing the energy that I get from this deck relating to the archetype. And as I move through the book and the activities that are in the book and the journal prompts and things, I really look forward to seeing how this deck is going to help me dig in. Let's end on the Strength card, because look at that. Again, fierce, inner power, finding your voice, knows their worth. This deck definitely knows their worth. This deck knows its worth 100%, knows its voice, And then I feel like is definitely helping me find mine as well. So that is the Witch Sister Tarot. Okay, so the next archetype, we have 3 more left, is lover. So keywords for lover are sensuality, intimacy in its deepest forms, compassion, true self, relationships and their complexities, meeting the goddess, holding nothing back, returning to the source of love deep within again and again. So I love the idea of the, compassion. I think compassion for self, just what true intimacy, right? Not just sexual intimacy, but true intimacy and like seeing each other and in relationships that we're in, seeing each other for who we are and all of those, like accepting all of those complexities within ourselves. And again, holding nothing back. And so the deck that I chose, this was a little tough for me. I really had to think, but really the one that kept coming back over and over again to me is this deck, which is the Rosebud Tarot. And for me, I mean, roses in general to me, are that symbol, that sort of universal symbol of love, in all of its forms, all the different color roses that you can get. It's not just red roses, but just the different, symbolism within the different kinds of roses that you can get. So more than just the rose being the symbol of love, I feel like this deck, it definitely is an archetypal journey. I think the creators of this deck even talk about this as being like a journey through different archetypes. But for me, this deck really, in terms of that archetype and the description of that intimacy and true self and the relationships and sort of accepting yourself and holding nothing back within those, something about this deck reminds me of that kind of love, that kind of true self-love and true self-compassion, and then the compassion for others and love that we have for others, how we extend that to others. We extend it to ourselves and then it extends out to others. And to me, this deck feels like a very relationship-based deck. Like the figures in it, you know what I mean, are in relation to each other. Like each card, is in relation to the next card, or, as you're going through the deck, all of these, there's a connection between them. Like they're all in a relationship with each other, and like at different time periods, right? And like it also feels like really ethereal sometimes, like otherworldly. But to me, this deck is just, it speaks of like universal love, and the love that we have for each other as human beings. And again, that compassionate piece, something about it drew me to this archetype, and just, it was the one that was calling to me as like, I think this is the archetype for the lover. At one point, I thought this was going to be the mother, and I was like, I kind of went back and forth because it also, to me, feels like it has a very grounding, motherly energy. A lot of like the figures in the cards to me like look like they're like mothers, like they're someone's mother, or someone's grandmother, and and things like that. So, but I feel like love in all of its forms, like, is coming through this deck. So, you have children in this deck, and you have, just different ages, different and different ethnicities, and just lots of different diverse people, within these stories. And like I said, the relation, like the complexities, like look at this card, like the complexities of relationships and the implications, of things like that, this in the card, like the implications and the relationships and how we have to be our true selves, and what is intimacy, right? Is true intimacy is holding nothing back and showing ourselves for who we are, and accepting that, accepting ourselves. So to me, this deck, the Rosebud Tarot, is embodying the lover archetype. And like I said, it might not make sense to everybody. In my brain, it's making sense. In my brain, I'm connecting it to this lover archetype. But it's also it's a really lovely deck. I'm excited to be able to use it more as I connect. This woman in this, it's so funny in this card. She looks like my grandmother, like one of my great grandmothers, my mother's grandmother. So I swear there's like a photo of her somewhere within like our belongings, like my mom's, probably within all my mom's photos. And it's like she's like sitting in a dress just like this with sunglasses on with a hairstyle almost like that. I think she's sitting like on the beach, like in a beach somewhere, like in the Rockaways, like in New York. I'm telling you this, I was like, oh my gosh, this looks like one of my relatives. But the Rosebud Tarot is the one that I chose for the lover archetype. So that is the Rosebud. Okay, so Mystic. The Mystic archetype. Alchemy, magic, sovereignty, intuition, and accessing higher levels of consciousness, ethereal, inner healing, shedding toxic buildup that's blocking potential, connecting to liminal space, a truth seeker. So I love the sovereignty word because that's my word of the year. So sovereignty, truth seeker, alchemist, magic. So this is the Mystic archetype. And the Mystic archetype, the one that I chose, which was pretty clear pick for me, although I went back and forth with a few decks. But the one I chose for this archetype is the Intuitive Night Goddess Tarot. Now this deck it's just absolutely stunning in the way that it was created. And for me, the description of liminal space, to me, this is this night, like these night scenes, the fact that they're like under all these stars and there's like planets like in moons and things in the back. To me, it feels very liminal, in this liminal like space between like night and like the dawn, right? Like the middle of the night feeling that this deck gives. But to me, this deck feels very mystical. It feels very magical. I also love the way this deck does not, in the guidebook, it doesn't name any specific like goddesses or deities or anything within any specific pantheon. And like the deck features people, you can tell, and figures from all different pantheons, right? We can tell that by their dress, right? And just their different features and the things that are, in the cards, like in the scenes and the cards with them. So this is a very like universal, we're not talking about specific deities. We're really talking about that spirit. And like it talks in the book, it talks about how this archetype of mystic is really connecting to the element of spirit. And to me, this has that like very, the way it says accessing higher levels of consciousness, this is like going beyond any specific like deity or specific pantheon and really tapping just into that sacred feminine energy in and of itself. And like just the scenes, like I said, it's so mystical feeling. It feels like that liminal space, like it talks about. And an inner healer. To me, this deck is very healing. If you're connected, especially in connecting with that feminine archetypal energy. And if you're maybe healing, some past, issues that you've had with connecting to that, type of energy. Again, it talks about blocking, like building up, shedding that toxic buildup, right? Sort of clearing, like a very clearing. And to me, this deck feels like that sort of cleansing and clearing energy. And again, without any real like connection to specific deities. So obviously it's called the Intuitive Night Goddess Tarot. So it is obviously a goddess-centered deck. But to me, it's very mystical, very magical. To me, it was a clear choice for this mystic archetype. Like I said, and just with all the flowers, like, and the fact that it's a night, like they're in this night garden, that's just blooming with all these beautiful flowers, and you're under the stars, and it is a very magical feeling deck. So for me, this was, like I said, the clear choice for the mystic archetype and connecting with the element of spirit. And I just love this deck. Like I said, I love the way, like all the different costumes, like all the different styles of dress, and just the different feelings it gives you, and just the different, like you see, it feels like a very worldly deck, right? The entire universe, like in a deck. And that's why, to me, like that mystic energy, it's not really connected to anyone. It's just that unseen. We tend to connect like specific female archetypal energies or like goddess energies to very specific goddesses. Like, so I work with this goddess for this. And this to me feels more like you're just connecting to that energy as a whole, like the collective, like all through history, through time, through space, you're connecting to all of that energy, right? The energy of like sort of this collective female archetype, this female mystic archetype. This deck to me is going to be a great way to connect to that energy. So this is the Intuitive Night Goddess Tarot, the one that I chose for the Mystic archetype. Okay, so we're on to our last archetype, and that is Queen. So the Queen archetype, some of the keywords: boldness, decisiveness, clarity, knows what they want, leadership, visionary, evolved and powerful, accepting faults in themselves and others, looking out for the collective good and humanity as a whole, letting in truth, lessons learned, embodying the wholeness of the mind and heart. I love that. So again, this is the Queen archetype. And the deck that I chose, again, this was one that when I started thinking about preparing the decks that I would pick, this was one I pulled off the shelf immediately, and I wasn't sure where it was going to fit. And I had picked it for the Mystic. And then the more I thought about it and just remembered what I know about this deck and the connection I have to it, I was like, this is the Queen. This is definitely the Queen for me in my collection. So the deck that I chose is the Dream Keeper's Tarot. So the Dream Keeper's Tarot, and this is the mass market edition. The Dream Keeper's Tarot is a deck that was created based on Liz Houston. It was years. This deck, like, she worked on this deck for years. And it was a way for her to heal like the wounds and like heal her relationship to the sacred feminine. So this deck in itself, again, just has that energy because of the creator. The creator's entire reasoning for creating the deck and their entire vision and their work for this deck was based around sacred feminine energy and connecting with that and healing the relationship with that. So this deck speaks to me and has for so long, based on what I know about Liz Houston and how she created it, but also her absolutely brilliant guidebook. This deck has one of the best guidebooks I've ever seen on a tarot deck. So like if you literally only get this deck so you can read the guidebook, do that, because I've read the guidebook several times and it is the most amazing guidebook. But definitely the Queen, in my mind, the Queen. To me, this deck there's a clarity to this deck that is, it's just unreal. Like when you use this in your tarot practice and use it for tarot readings, the clarity, it feels very evolved. This deck feels like very evolved. Like it's a visionary, right? For anyone who doesn't know this deck or hasn't seen the imagery, some of it is very jarring. But to me, this deck, Liz Houston and her art, she was a visionary in terms of what she was creating when it came to this deck, a lot of the artwork. So to me, this feels like the collective unconscious. It feels like accepting faults in themselves and others, right? Healing that sort of like that, being able to accept that. To me, this is embodying that whole connection between the mind, right, and the heart, like just making sure that those two are in alignment. It's evolved, it's bold. This deck is bold. This deck is a queen, one of my favorite hierophants in any deck. I can say that about so many cards in this deck, but one of my favorite hierophants. The other thing to know about this deck, again, one of my favorite lovers, and the guidebook description for this card is absolutely amazing. You see there's these three you see like the 3 figures here, there's like 3, and there's like moon phases. This relates to like the fates. The fates in this deck are the Wheel of Fortune, one of my favorite Wheel of Fortune, probably my favorite Wheel of Fortune card ever in any deck. But this deck is a queen. Like, to me, this deck is a badass queen, and I don't feel like this deck gets the recognition it deserves. Like, she is a badass, like, and gives some, like I said, very powerful readings. The other thing about this deck, which is so funny, I chose it and then I realized, I'm like, oh my gosh, like this is alignment right now. This is like synchronicity. I realized that the queens in this deck are the top of the hierarchy. So it goes page, knight, king, queen. So the queens are at the top of the hierarchy in this deck. So again, it's just really reinforcing my choice as the queen. Like, to represent the queen archetype is these queens who are at the top of the hierarchy within the court cards. And she calls them the court mentors, I believe, is like how she refers to them in the guidebook. But the queens are at the top because of course they are. So, and I'm just selfishly trying to find the Wheel of Fortune card because it's my favorite Wheel of Fortune card of all time. But this is the Dreamkeeper's Tarot. Again, if you don't know this deck, please, like, at least just give it a look. I honestly, like, it. At first I was like, this is not for me. This artwork is not for me. I was like, I don't think I'm ever going to use this deck. And then I got it. And then I read the guidebook, and then I used it, and then I read the guidebook again, and I was blown away. I have a deep dive of the major arcana. I'll try to link it in the cards just because, in case anyone's this deck just deserves so much attention. And I'm going to film a minor arcana, I promise. For anyone who's interested in a deep dive into the minors, I'm definitely going to do it. I'm so busy, and there's so many different things I'm trying to do. So I'm just trying to focus and avoid that burnout that everyone's been talking about, trying to avoid that. But this is stuff that really excites me. So yeah, so it's definitely there. It's just on the back burner. But oh yeah, the Dreamkeeper's Tarot is the queen. There it is. There's the fates. Oh my gosh, that's my favorite. The 3 fates. Is that not just amazing? Does that not just blow your mind? Like, definitely the queen is the Dreamkeeper's Tarot. So there you have it. We have the 7 archetypes to guide me on this journey, this practice of digging into these 7 female archetypal energies, which I'm super excited about. Again, this is really relating to my spiritual practice with my tarot practice. You know, it's really sort of bridging those 2 things. So again, it's definitely not going to be for everyone. Not everyone is going to have an interest. Again, you don't have to have the book. I mean, I recommend it if you're interested in female archetypes and diving into them. I definitely recommend this book, The Sage Huntress Lover Queen. I definitely recommend this. But you don't need it. You don't have to have it. You can connect with archetypes. You don't even need tarot decks to connect with female archetypes. But if it's something that you would be interested in, please, I would love for you to join me. Again, I will put the hashtag in the title of the video so that anyone who wants to can use the hashtag, and then I will know that you did it, and I will be so excited to hear your thoughts and see what decks you chose. But these are my 7 sacred female archetypal tarot decks to assist me on my journey. Again, the Maiden, the Mother, the Sage, the Huntress, the Lover, the Mystic, and the Queen. So thank you so much for tuning in. If you stuck around to the end, Thank you so much. I look forward to connecting with you in the YouTube space, and go ahead and follow me on Instagram if you haven't. I will link that in the description box as well. Please, if you will, like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed, please do that. I would love to have you here and just joining me on these rambling videos of mine. And I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.